Good evening, everybody joining us here physically. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining us virtually from wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for making the time to join us this evening, or whichever time it is where you are, for this session, a very wonderful session indeed, with great speakers lined up for us. So this session is on developing and financing governance for water scarcity. And I would like to start us off with a really nice quote that I came across from the SWAS Sector Ministers Meeting 2022 outcome document, which talks about accountability, which is our subject of discussion today. And it says, accountability is a central tenet for accelerating sustained progress, strengthening collaboration, reinforcing inclusive participation, and building resilience, especially through sharing of information and ensuring transparency to meet commitments and obligations. So let's think about that as we discuss, or as we have this discussion today. My name is Joan Kones. I'm the National Research and Projects Lead at Kenya Water and Sanitation, a civil society network based in Kenya. And today I will be taking you through this session, and I'll start us off with a brief presentation on accountability for water, a program that we recently conducted in 6 African countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Liberia. All right, so this is just, sorry. Just a minute. All right, as we wait for that to get sorted, for our online participants, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. And should you have any questions, do so in the chat box as well. And we'll read it out, or read them out to the audience. It's this, yeah. All right, so the Accountability for Water program is basically a collaborative initiative that brought together different organizations across the globe to really study accountability, to understand what is the missing piece in promoting good governance, and more so to understand the different aspects that are required to promote accountability in the water sector. So we wanted to look into what works, in what context, and how when it comes to accountability. And this drawing over here is just the track of the Accountability for Water program, which really started in 2015, and as I said, as a collaborative initiative that brought different stakeholders together to conceptualize the idea. So again, in 2016, several stakeholders sat together and thought through this process, and all these years up until 2020, the program was being conceptualized. And in 2020, we managed to launch the program. And in 2021 and 2022, we were able to conduct this research. And today I'm going to be sharing with you the results from that. So what is accountability? Just a brief overview on this. So accountability is the ability to review, explain, and report performance against set rules and responsibilities. Without rules and responsibilities, then you cannot have accountability, because then what are you accounting for and to whom? And of course, there's also the reaction bit, reaction constructively to improve performance through sanctions, incentives, or corrective measures. So we came up with this wheel of understanding accountability, which has the 5 R's that I just talked about: rules, responsibilities, reporting, review, and reaction. So this is the theory of change of the program. So what is the issue that we are really trying to look into or address? And the issue is poorly performing service delivery and governance in WASH and WRM. WASH always goes hand in hand with WRM. And where do we want to go? So we want to achieve impact in the sense of improved water sanitation and hygiene services and improved water resource management. So then we know the problem, we know where we want to go, and what are the interventions that we opted for or that are available. So there's social accountability, monitoring and initiatives, there's budget analysis, there's evidence-based advocacy, and this is the one that we implemented, and there's statutory accountability mechanisms. But again, there are a number of factors that really determine whether you achieve this impact. And there are a number of them. We have internal factors, we have external factors, and intermediate factors. So I'll just give a few examples of these factors. For the external, we have, for example, government capacity. We have political perception of this work. And then for the internal factors, we have things like donor support or approach, which we'll talk much more about. We have gender sensitivity of the program, among others. And then for the intermediate factors, we have several, including community capacity, among others. All right, so the guiding questions of the program were categorized into 3, because when you talk about accountability, there's the duty bearer, there's the citizens themselves, and then of course the enabling environment. So I'll just go through one example of one question each. For the community dynamics of accountability, we wanted to look at factors that stimulate or constrain citizen engagement and voice. And then under government dynamics, again, just one example, one of the questions: what factors can stimulate or constrain government mechanisms for accountability responsiveness to citizens? Accountability and responsiveness to citizens. And then under enabling environment, how can accountability be supported and resourced in different contexts? So we conducted this research through professional research fellows to whom we gave grants to conduct various accountability for water projects. And these are just the fellows across the countries that I talked about. All right, so a summary of the surveys that were conducted. They were representative of urban and rural samples across the 3 East African countries and also the other 3 regional countries in Africa. And the main results, top-level results, indicated that awareness of accountability structure is generally low. Number 2, water conflict is primarily with neighbors. It's never far away. Conflict when it comes to water is pretty much among neighbors. And then thirdly, trust is generally low, leading to non-reporting, especially among citizens. And then I'll just give results across each of the 3 areas that I talked about. And under governance dynamics, the results summarized into these 2 points is that laws, policies, and regulations are often let down by poor coordination, unclear roles and responsibilities, and widespread lack of enforcement. So it's not that we don't have these policies or laws. They are there for sure, but there's a gap in implementation. And then accountability structures are often part of programs, but again, they fade and have to be rebuilt as programs come and go. So that's a question on sustainability. So we need to think about how to ensure sustainability. And then on community dynamics and civil society, there is need to activate citizen oversight. So now I'm moving to the recommendations just because of time. So recommendations to civil society and community is that there is need to activate citizen oversight mechanisms with government. There is need to build capacity, empower, and organize community. So they demand for accountability. And thirdly, there is need to build on what works. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. As we said, we have policies in place. There are things that already work, so we just need to build on this. And then on to development partners and private sector, financial support is required to both government and civil society to strengthen accountability frameworks, monitoring and enforcement. Again, later on, we'll discuss more about financing, internal and external financing. And then there's also need for financial sustainability for accountability. So accountability is not always a very interesting topic to many, but it's a necessary topic to discuss. So there is need to ensure financial sustainability for accountability. And then there is need to demand structural accountability as due diligence and mandatory reporting on water. So to our development partners, kindly include this as a requirement for reporting when you give us funds so that we ensure that accountability is maintained. And for sure, let us all be accountable, including the development partners. All right, so I'll stop there, but should you want to hear more about or read more about our study, kindly visit our website, where we have all these program reports, evidence review data set, briefing notes, among others, under www.accountabilityforwater.org. So before I conclude, I would like to thank all our partners, as I started by saying that this is a collaborative initiative. So many thanks to Hewlett Foundation, who are really championing for accountability and providing us with this financial support. And to our partners, PASGA, Water Witness International for technical support, and all these countries and organizations who are part of this program. So that's it for an introduction to accountability. Thank you so much for your 10 minutes. Moving from here, I would now assume the moderator role, and I would like to invite a couple of our speakers. So how this session is going to be structured, we'll have 2 presentations, and then we'll have a panel discussion. So to our next presenter, Musa, I will welcome you to the stage. So Musa Traore is the Rights, Equity and Inclusion Officer at WaterAid, who will be taking us through a presentation, sharing with us the experiences in Mali. You have 10 minutes, Musa. Welcome. Yes.
Ok, bonsoir à tous. Ma présentation, c'est en français. Je pense qu'il y a la traduction en anglais. Moi, c'est Moussa Alou Traoré. Je suis le chargé de droit, équité et inclusion de WaterAid Mali. Voilà. Donc, je vais vous présenter ce soir l'expérience de WaterAid Mali par rapport à la mise en place des mécanismes de redevabilité dans la mise en œuvre des projets WASH. Il s'agit des expériences, des activités que nous avons menées, que nous appelons développer et financer la responsabilité, une gouvernance responsable dans le cadre de la pénurie d'eau. Voici un peu le plan de ma présentation. Le contexte d'intervention de nos projets, la réponse de WaterAid et les leçons apprises. Voici un peu le contexte d'intervention. Dans la mise en œuvre de nos projets, nous réalisons des activités, des ouvrages d'infrastructure d'eau et assainissement. Nous mettons en place des organisations de gestion pour assurer la gestion de ces services. Nous formons également ces organisations que nous mettons en place pour assurer la gestion de nos interventions. Et nous appuyons également les organisations de gestion, plus précisément dans les centres de santé, à développer des plans qu'on appelle des plans WashFit. Autre contexte, dans la mise en œuvre de nos projets, il y a la gestion, les problèmes de gestion, ou bien des problèmes de fonctionnement des organes que nous mettons en place pour gérer les infrastructures. Il y a également des problèmes par rapport au respect des engagements. Il y a aussi le problème de suivi des actions que nous menons dans le cadre de la réalisation de nos projets. Il y a également des problèmes de redevabilité qui existent. Et tout cela aboutissent à des problèmes de durabilité quand les ouvrages que nous avons réalisés ne fonctionnent pas. Si les organes de gestion que nous avons mis en place ne sont pas fonctionnels, il n'y a pas de redevabilité. Évidemment, les ouvrages, les interventions ne seront pas durables. Pour résoudre ces problèmes de gouvernance, de redevabilité et surtout de durabilité des interventions, WaterAid a développé au Mali des approches qui sont axées sur l'approche basée sur les droits humains pour amener les communautés, les responsables de la fourniture des services à être plus redevables dans la fourniture des services aux communautés les plus vulnérables. La toute première approche que nous voulons partager avec vous ce soir, ça c'est le jury citoyen. Le jury citoyen, c'est un outil que nous utilisons pour amener les citoyens à participer au processus de prise de décision par rapport à la gestion des ouvrages d'eau, d'hygiène, assainissement. Et le processus passe par quelques étapes que vous voyez. Notamment, nous menons des audits, des diagnostics au niveau des communautés pour identifier des citoyens. Nous organisons des sessions de présentation et de formation. Nous organisons également des audiences pour permettre aux citoyens de prendre des décisions consultatives et nous aidons ces communautés-là à restituer les résultats de ces audits aux communautés, aux autorités et amener les autorités enfin à prendre des décisions pour améliorer la fourniture des services d'eau, d'hygiène et assainissement. Donc c'est un mécanisme que nous mettons en place pour améliorer, amener les citoyens, les communautés les plus vulnérables à participer au processus de prise de décision concernant la fourniture des services d'eau, d'hygiène et assainissement. La seconde approche que nous voulons partager avec vous ce soir, c'est le renforcement des capacités des autorités et l'autonomisation des groupes vulnérables. Alors, à travers notre approche basée sur les droits humains, nous amenons d'une part à renforcer la capacité des autorités locales, à être plus redevables, à améliorer la fourniture des services au profit des groupes les plus vulnérables, et nous renforçons, nous autonomisons les communautés les plus vulnérables à réclamer leurs droits. Donc, ce travail, nous le faisons à travers cette approche, une approche axée sur l'approche basée sur les droits humains pour amener les responsables de la fourniture des services à être plus vulnérables et les autorités, les groupes les plus vulnérables à réclamer leurs droits. Donc, ces quelques étapes sont là qui nous permettent de réaliser cette approche, notamment le renforcement des capacités des autorités sur l'approche basée sur les droits humains, la formation et la mise en place des comités d'éveil citoyen, également, nous nous axons sur les conventions qui existent entre les organes de gestion, plus précisément les communautés, les autorités, pour améliorer la fourniture des services, à auditer, à faire le diagnostic de ces conventions-là. Par exemple, la convention d'assistance mutuelle au niveau des centres de santé. Donc, pour mettre en place un mécanisme de dialogue, de redevabilité entre les citoyens et améliorer la fourniture des services. Et aussi, nous faisons des formations sur le plaidoyer, le suivi budgétaire pour amener les citoyens à suivre la fourniture des services d'eau, d'hygiène et assainissement. Et aussi, nous mettons en place des mécanismes de suivi coaching, pour amener les citoyens à suivre les engagements que les autorités ont pris pour améliorer les services d'eau, d'hygiène et assainissement au profit des communautés les plus vulnérables. Autre approche que nous voulons partager avec vous, c'est le suivi budgétaire. Le suivi budgétaire et le plaidoyer. Le plaidoyer et le suivi budgétaire est une approche que nous utilisons aussi pour amener les responsables de la fourniture des services à être plus redevables, améliorer la gouvernance des services. Alors, à travers cette approche, nous aidons les communes, les autorités à élaborer leurs plans au niveau local, les plans de mise en œuvre des services sociaux de base comme l'eau, hygiène, assainissement, à mettre en place, à élaborer ces documents au niveau local, tout en s'assurant que les services d'eau, d'hygiène et assainissement sont priorisés dans ce plan au niveau local. Ensuite, nous appuyons les collectivités à mobiliser pour aller vers la mise en œuvre de ce plan. Et annuellement, nous faisons le suivi de ce plan-là. Et une fois que nous appuyons les collectivités, les services techniques à faire le suivi de ce plan annuellement, et nous organisons des activités de plaidoyer axées sur l'analyse budgétaire. C'est-à-dire, après les évaluations, nous nous assurons, si toutefois les questions d'eau et d'assainissement sont prises en compte dans ces plans-là, et que voilà, nous nous focalisons sur les résultats de ces évaluations pour faire un plaidoyer et améliorer la fourniture des services. Alors, autre expérience que nous voulons partager aujourd'hui, ça c'est l'institutionnalisation des cadres de dialogue. Donc, nous aidons également les communautés, les responsables de la fourniture des services, à instaurer un dialogue permanent entre eux, entre les parties, pour améliorer la gouvernance, la redevabilité dans la fourniture des services d'eau, d'hygiène et d'assainissement. Et c'est là à travers ces différentes activités. Au niveau local, nous nous focalisons sur les audiences villageoises. Nous organisons des cadres de concertation entre les autorités, entre les acteurs, et nous développons des mécanismes de suivi pour les recommandations issues de ces cadres qui sont réalisés au niveau local et même au niveau des villages. La dernière expérience que nous voulons partager avec vous ce soir, ça c'est la participation, la mise en place du suivi d'impact local participatif, un mécanisme de suivi participatif que nous mettons en place dans les écoles, dans les centres de santé, pour amener les citoyens à suivre la fourniture des services dans les écoles, dans les centres de santé. C'est un outil, un mécanisme qui outille les communautés, les organes de gestion que nous avons mis en place pour faire le suivi quotidien de la fourniture des services d'eau, d'hygiène et d'assainissement dans les centres de santé et dans les écoles. Voici un peu l'illustration de cet outil que je viens de dire, le suivi d'impact local participatif. Donc voici un tableau que nous réalisons, que nous implantons dans les centres de santé, dans les écoles, et c'est les citoyens sont renforcés pour faire l'évaluation des services d'eau, d'hygiène, assainissement dans les centres de santé à travers cet outil. Donc cet outil, nous l'appelons le tableau de bord de suivi participatif. Et ces expériences, nous les avons développées à travers plusieurs projets, notamment les projets accès équitable et inclusif en milieu urbain, le projet Djine-BCA que nous avons réalisé avec l'appui de WaterAid Global et OneDrop en 2018, le projet BCA Bloom qui est actuellement en cours, financé par WaterAid, OneDrop et Senachef, et le projet, un autre projet qui est en cours actuellement, financé par la Fondation LDSC. Donc ces approches, nous les avons développées à travers la mise en œuvre de ces 4 projets. Voici également une session d'évaluation d'une école par les communautés pour voir un peu comment la fourniture des services évolue, comment l'école se porte en termes de fourniture d'accès à l'eau. Donc voici cette session-là. Les leçons apprises, nous avons appris à travers la mise en œuvre de ces projets que la durabilité, la redevabilité est un facteur de durabilité des interventions. Tant que il n'y a pas la redevabilité entre les acteurs, tant que la gouvernance n'est pas bonne, il n'y aura pas l'appropriation et les services ne seront pas durables. Également, nous avons appris que la redevabilité, la gouvernance permet aux communautés de s'approprier des projets. Donc nous savons tous que l'appropriation des communautés, de tout ce que nous réalisons comme projet, en leur nom, sont également des aspects qui nous conduisent à la durabilité. La dernière leçon apprise est que voilà, l'approche basée sur les droits humains que nous avons développée depuis plusieurs années à WaterAid est un élément vraiment très important pour amener les citoyens à s'approprier des projets, pour amener les autorités à être plus réactifs et pour amener les citoyens à réclamer leurs droits et améliorer la durabilité. Les défis. Alors, le premier défi est que voilà, nous travaillons avec des organes que nous mettons en place pour améliorer la fourniture des services, pour gérer les services d'eau. Alors, après les projets, comment continuer à motiver les membres de ces organes-là? Le second défi, c'est que voilà, le suivi de l'engagement des responsables, des autorités par rapport à la fourniture des services aux communautés les plus vulnérables. Donc ça aussi, c'est un défi. Voici une autre session voilà, de suivi d'impact local participatif par les citoyens pour mesurer un peu voilà, le niveau du service d'eau fourni dans une école. C'était là l'expérience de WaterAid Mali que nous voulons partager avec vous ce soir. Merci beaucoup.
All right, thank you so much, Musa, for sharing with us your experience as WaterAid in Mali. Please hold on to your questions. I'll give you a chance to ask them after we have this presentation. So now to the stage, I would like to invite Dr. Nick Hepworth, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Water Witness International, and will take us through the SDG 6 financing facility. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Joan, and great to hear about the exciting work in Mali, Musa. So really, congratulations on that. As Joan said, I'm going to talk briefly about something we're calling the SDG 6 Accountability Facility, which includes finance, which is the next wave of action and focus for the Accountability for Water research program. Now, some of you may have been here a few years. It's back in 2016, where a group of us from civil society networks across the world, from Water Witness, from WaterAid, from IRC, from the Water Integrity Network, we'd all been working on accountability monitoring, or supporting communities and civil society, more accurately, to do this, this work of accountability monitoring for progress in the sector. Now, we'd all seen and experienced glimmers of real progress within this work. In some cases, the application of civil society oversight and bargaining and tracking was delivering rapid progress for improved services, not just on WASH, but improved water resource governance and climate change resilience. And we wanted to know, well, we wanted to lift the lid on that. What makes it work? Yeah, if we can get this right, if we can understand it, if we can build accountability science, wow, that's gold dust for those of us looking to deliver SDG 6. So I'll push back on Joanne's comment about accountability being a bit boring. I don't think so. I think in 30 years of work in the water sector, I see it as the magic source that it's almost the only thing that can get us closer to SDG 6. There's not much else out there, right? So I want to congratulate the team behind the Accountability for Water program. It wasn't easy to deliver a really complex multi-country program that began the same week that COVID did. But they did it, and that deserves kudos, so chapeau to everybody who worked on it. And they've created a community of practice and learning on this thing called accountability for water across Africa, and the excitement with which the issues being discussed and the ideas that people are coming with. We didn't answer all the questions, but we know what the big questions are moving forward. And we've got a real vision and shared objective in terms of the next phase of work to really scale up accountability and make it count for SDG 6, SDG 6 delivery. So there's a huge amount of work, exciting work on accountability out there. Jonathan Fox in the US, Rosa McGee and John Gaventa at IDS. There's loads of exciting background there. Really, these are the kinds of models we're interested in, that civil society and citizens monitor what's really going on the ground and bring that learning about what's working and why and what's not working to different levels of governance to bargain for change, yeah, in a systematic way. Not offhand, not hearsay, using evidence, credible voice to reshape the political economy on water so it delivers for the people we want to reach. Using compelling stories, voice and advocacy to inform by evidence to get change. That's the idea. What we found, there's lots of work to summarize from the Accountability for Water program. It adopted a really innovative model of using, originally we were thinking about PhD students. Let's parachute some PhDs from those countries to understand the issue. Stakeholders said, no. Put our staff into that role so they can own the learning and carry it forward. So we had people from governments, from NGOs, from research institutes in those countries doing this research. We had some cross-country, large-scale end questionnaires to understand what citizens understood about accountability and why they responded. And we did a whole bunch of key informant interviews, I think probably over 100 key informant interviews with stakeholders from duty bearers in each of the governments to understand, to really lift the lid and understand why and when does accountability work or not. We also did a global evidence review. So we took a year and a half. That was easy to do during COVID because it was online. But we screened everything that's been written on accountability, advocacy, and water. And had a look at it. Is it any good? Is the research good? Is it a good evaluation? What does it tell us? And it told us that intuitively we know that accountability, bargaining by and oversight by civil society as a community is a good thing. But it proved that. It showed that 8% of those interventions led to faster or better outcomes for SDG 6. And the evidence review's there, you can dive into it. There's a global map which shows you what the evidence says, and you can query it on a country level or an issue level basis. It tells us it's a pretty good investment if we're interested in progress. And it's pretty low risk and pretty cheap. But action is currently constrained by inadequate and unpredictable resource flows and limited technical backstopping for civil society and communities. I.e., there's dollops of project money here and there, but there's no strategic systemic support to support those at the front line of the water crisis, bargaining for change, tracking budgets, standing up there at joint water sector reviews, taking governments and businesses to court for water abuse. There's limited support for those people, right? So what are we doing as a water community globally if we're not supporting those on the front line? The evidence review shows the gap. SDG 6 facility is about filling that gap. The good news is that there's widespread support for this, for the community of practice sees the need and made a strong joint call in the run-up to UN Water for funding of accountability monitoring, for governments to improve their own monitoring and to implement existing structures and policies for it. The good news is that the ministers convened by SWA, Sector Sanitation and Water for All, also agree that accountability is important. Ministers want that feedback. They want to know when policies are working and when they're not. Yeah, and accountability by civil society communities can be that eyes and ears on the ground. When are the institutions, the systems failing and why? So it's great news because it's not seen by all governments as a challenge function. It's seen as a support function, which is a good opportunity. The good news is that governments around the world and businesses are starting to see the need for stronger accountability monitoring. There's a new initiative launched at COP26 called Fair to Footprints, which is about ending the abuse of water in our global supply chains. The central mechanism for that is supporting civil society to provide oversight of what companies and banks are doing on water. So again, civil society, community, accountability monitoring to keep the sector and water users honest, realising the human right to water and ensuring that citizen voice and marginalised communities are at the centre of decision making. So how do we do it? The funding and support currently piecemeal, and many of you I know can attest to that because you're the people we're talking about. There's no regular, reliable source of finance, technical advice, legal support. We want to solve that by creating collectively a shared global facility. that civil society groups and communities and media can apply to draw down for long-term support. Change happens not in 2 years, but in 3, 5, 6, 7 years. So for long-term to support to do that work with finance, science, technical support, legal advice, capacity building and grants to enable them to do that work. And again, it's not expensive. 50, 60 grand a year is all we're talking for a strong civil society group to do that oversight and take evidence to the joint sector review. And it works. We've got evidence of that. So this money is a drawdown fund which will be available to these different groups who will demonstrate their demand for this and capability to deliver accountability monitoring, and they'll get advice, support and finance. They'll also benefit from the lessons generated by the Accountability for Water research. You know, this the repository of now 7 years of evidence of what works and why, so they'll be supported by an evidence base and tools and techniques. And they'll be supported in order to do that demand, bargaining and oversight and action for change. And through this, we will identify the institutional architecture that's needed to beef up accountability, and there's lots of examples of that. You know, human right to water, so what? What happens when a government or a business abuses that? What's the sanction? Currently, doesn't really exist. Do we need an institutional mechanism for that? So lots of progressive and great opportunities for progress. So, in summary, multiple strategically targeted interventions, high integrity, learning-centered action, shifting project funds to long-term engagement to enable people to tenaciously bargain for change, global or Pan-Africa to enable larger donors to recapitalize that fund and the transaction costs for everybody are minimized, including for civil society, which is currently cash-strapped. The good news is that we've got some seed funding to do the detailed design and piloting, both from the Hewlett Foundation, which is already agreed. So we'll be working in a limited set of countries to set this up, but there's also funding on track from a number of governments, which is why I need to dash off shortly to go to the UK ambassador's residence to secure £30 million, some of which will come to this. So apologies to cut you short. We couldn't do it without the bravery and the ingenuity of our colleagues at the front line of the water crisis in Africa and elsewhere. So this great work is testament to that and their vision. And join us, they need support. As it says here, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much.
All right, thank you so much, Nick, for that wonderful presentation and taking us through the water facility. I would now like to invite us for a few questions before we move to the panel discussion, just when the presentations are still fresh on your minds. So should you have a question, we can take about 3 or 4 and then move to the panel discussion. Over there? Yes.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dario Garcia from ONGAO, a Spanish organization working in WASH implementation. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's been really interesting and very, very nice topic of discussion. My first question is more related to the program of accountability for water, because I agree completely with the need and the importance of including accountability in the implementation of projects and WASH programs. But it's true that there is then the need, as you've said, for funding and donors to support with financial resources, to be able to make it real. Related to that, so to make it more appealing for donors and more implementable for us practitioners, I don't know, if you have developed any set of indicators to make sure that there is a measurable impact, or how are you measuring the impact of the accountability? For example, there is a reduction of non-functionality of systems, there is an improvement in cost recovery or a reduction of non-revenue water. So, yeah.
That's a really brilliant question, and it's exactly the right question to ask. I mean, it's a tricky one, and part of the Accountability for Water programme was to look at just that question. How do we track and monitor and measure and set indicators for accountability? And of course, what we're talking about really is political change, and it's difficult to predict that. So the traditional problem around these programs is that you can create a log frame, but you don't actually know what the change is until you're into it. And change happens along long and winding rivers of progress, right? It's not a cause effect. So and often attribution is difficult because few governments or donors will tell you, oh, I changed this because you called us out on it, right? That's not really how it goes. So there's all these complexities. The way we're trying to deal with it is through looking at linking to SDG 6 indicators, for head count, so through this work, how much change can you get? Material change for people, disaggregated to by status and gender, and a head count approach. So before and after, have you got material change and a sort of triangulation around? Well, actually, you can claim that, you can attribute that based on your advocacy or accountability monitoring, or outcome mapping, right? So basically saying, well, what change happened as a result of this, and getting people to agree, well, the cause and effect was this, and therefore you can learn lessons around why or why not you got the change. So it's a muddy answer to a great question. We're not there yet, but we need to go beyond log frames, right, and recognise that there's a case for investing in movement building and responding to elite capture that goes beyond log frame thinking.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm gonna ask a question to the British guy here because he seems like he wants to be in the hot chair. So,
Really.
when it comes to accountability, I think one of the things that I notice on these presentations is that you do not seem to mention anything about the use of satellites, sensors, for monitoring the amount of water that has been taken by each agent or the stakeholder, so to speak. Are you doing anything in terms of developing some sort of, adding something to this, to your programs that are able to sort of see who takes water at any given time? Thank you.
Again, it's a great question. I don't want to be the face of the program, right? There's all these other brilliant people. Right, but if we can get access to, if the network, if this community could access that or afford to access that, it would be brilliant. But it's expensive, right? We use Google Earth and we use drones, and drones have probably been the best innovation in the water sector I've seen in 20 years working in those places, right? Because all of a sudden you can see what's happening with communities, and you send a drone up and have a look, you see where the pollution's coming from, who's getting the water through croc-infested rivers that you wouldn't normally be able to have a look at. So visibility, imaging, yeah, but that's what the facility's about, is starting to provide that level of technical backup, again, to support people on the front line. So if you've got ideas, it sounds like you've got ideas and knowledge about who can help us, and that'd be fantastic.
Hi, thank you both. My name is Jeremy Lakin from RTI International. When I think about accountability, I think about consequences as kind of reinforcing correct behavior. So even at the short term, have you seen kind of successful application of consequences? And Moussa, si tu peux répondre aussi. C'est quand je pense de accountability, je pense aussi des conséquences. Est-ce que vous savez d'exemples où même si au terme court, où on peut appliquer les conséquences pour les gens qui ne pas obéir les règles.
Okay, merci beaucoup pour la question. Il veut savoir s'il a des conséquences. Oui, c'est vrai, la comptabilité, il y a des conséquences. Parce que quand on parle de redevabilité, d'accomptabilité, la gouvernance, c'est une question de transparence. Et aujourd'hui, la difficulté est que la transparence, aujourd'hui, dans tout ce que nous faisons, pose problème. Dire à quelqu'un d'être transparent dans tout ce qu'il fait, la personne pense que vraiment tu es là pour le contrôler, pour le suivre, et ça l'agace. Ce qui fait que souvent, les conséquences sont énormes. Les autorités avec lesquelles nous travaillons, les responsables de la fourniture des services, même les organes de gestion que nous mettons en place, sont un peu réticents par rapport à cette question de transparence, de gouvernance, de redevabilité. Donc, pour le début, il y a assez de résistance. Mais à travers les outils que nous avons développés, surtout à WaterAid, l'approche basée sur les droits que nous avons développée pendant plusieurs années nous amène à créer la confiance entre nous et les autorités, à leur donner des exemples, des bonnes pratiques, pour leur montrer vraiment l'évidence, ce que la redevabilité peut les amener comme bénéfice, et en ce moment, ils commencent à collaborer. Sinon, la conséquence, c'est la résistance, c'est le refus de collaborer avec nous, et c'est souvent des tensions entre les acteurs, et ça peut vraiment poser des obstacles par rapport à la mise en œuvre des projets. Merci.
All right, thank you so much. I would now like to invite to stage our speakers for the panel discussion. First, I would like to invite Jane Nabunya, who is the country director of IRC Uganda. Welcome to stage, Madam Jane, and thank you for joining us. And now I would like also to invite Ruth Nganga from the Kenya Water Sector Trust Fund, where she serves as the general manager. Thank you so much and welcome. And our presenters, Musa, please join them on stage. All right. Yes, thank you, Nick. All right, so I will start with the ladies who haven't spoken yet today. And my first question is to you, Jane. So in our discussion today, we've talked about the importance of accountability and the fact that it plays a really key role and is necessary, a necessity in the water sector. And then again, we said that there is need to finance accountability. But I know based on your experience, you have a number of things to say about accountability. So could you please share with us more insights on the importance of good governance and making better use of existing funds before even getting or borrowing from other sources? How can we make a difference with the funds that are already available first before getting more from outside?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm from IRC, based in Uganda, and IRC was also part of this study, but in the background, my two colleagues, John Butterworth and Katarina Fonseca, were part of this. And going to the point, accountability, whichever way you look at it, whatever words you want to use, it causes discomfort. Even if you package it in white, once you use the word accountability, you cause discomfort. And that is where normally issues start from. Accountability is normally, it should be part of good governance, especially good governance. But it brings out the devil in us, in a way. Why are you questioning me? Don't you trust me? You gave me money. I have spent it. And I'm telling you I've spent it like this. But you are questioning my spending. You're questioning my roles and responsibilities. You're questioning whether there was value for money in what you provided me. And once those antennas go up, whether somebody mentions that I'm uncomfortable or not, you've already caused discomfort. And when it comes to, and still looking at it from the point of view of governance, specifically good governance, it has to be good governance. You're raising red flags. Not many people want to even have it there. We've already done this work. We already agreed on the procedures, the rules, the standards. Why are you asking me these questions? I have been in the sector since 2009. And these words, it's of late that they are becoming really heavy. Those days when I joined, you would hear things like value for money, forensic audit. The donors are not happy because a number of things were not respected. They even changed the coordinator. Why are they questioning us that we changed the coordinator? We recruited another person. It's not just about money. It's all the processes that go into implementation, the thinking, the deliverables. It is everything, and that's where the problem really comes from. And from my experience and looking at my own country, I come from Uganda, you find we've had cases where, for example, a project comes in, it's a very big project, every donor has put in money. Then the accountability questions start coming up. They are looking at receipts. You mean you have 3 motorcycles? So each motorcycle has a capacity tank of 200 liters? You see? It looks very small, but it raises very, very, very hard questions. Or a report comes out, a forensic audit is done, and it's sent to, say, the ministry, and the only response for each of the questions raised is, it will be handled. We will follow up. We will send the response. It will be done. Do you see why I'm going with this? I'm not even talking about money. The money is behind all this, but you're accountable when you provide certain answers, when you respect the rules of the game, when you hold yourself accountable. If you are in an organization and the biggest part of your budget is big vehicles that never go to the field, that are parked at the bars every evening with your branded name on them, what exactly are you saying? You know? So for me, it is deeper than that, and I used to hear all these, working with the Good Governance Working Group of the Ministry of Water and Environment in Uganda, and the Good Governance Thematic Working Group of the Uganda Water and Sanitation Network, KEWASNET. Those questions would come out every day, and you would get answers like, we've already submitted the report to the donor, and the donor is okay. So you, civil society organization, why are you asking? What is your legal mandate? Whom are you representing? So issues of legitimacy come out, and they are questioning your legitimacy. You show your permit, you show your license to operate, and they're like, no. Because you are asking the accountability questions. And I think it was raised by Nick, and I think him, during your presentation. Legitimacy, who are you? Not so much where you're getting your money. Do you have the capacity to go legal? Do you have the capacity not to fear as a civil society organization? Because once you ask those questions, you're getting into space that is not yours. Civic space in most of our countries is, I don't know about your countries, but in some good countries, including where I come from, it's shrinking that you cannot ask. Lastly, I can add some more. Issues when you look at it from the point of view of beyond, let me still go back to the legal. In terms of capacity, we have cases right now in my country, 32 organizations were closed over, well, different questions here and there, but the main question was your source of money is not clear. Your accountability, whom are you accounting for? We went to the NGO Bureau office and you don't have any reports there. You shouldn't get resources from donor X or donor Y because we don't like working with that donor. Or you get so much money, aren't you involved in money laundering? And 32 of them are closed up to now. There were 34, only 2 managed to litigate. But the process was very long. Lawyers are very expensive, just because they raise questions around accountability, around governance. They'll question things like, do you have a board? How did you select that board? But when we look at the board, it has him who is your relative and is related to him, so your transparency levels are very low. And when you get the money, you've constructed this house and this house, so many things. So for me, when I look at it from the water sector, we have a good governance working group in government that generates evidence, that works with the IGG, the Inspector General of Government, that works with the Anti-Corruption Unit of the country, that works with Transparency International, but still issues of accountability remain hanging. There are red flags. Every time they come out, questions arise. So basically for me, it is, you have to work with many others, but where is your start and stop? And how do you present your evidence? The sector in Uganda is called a consumptive sector, that we only consume. We are not a productive sector. What is the water sector contribution to GDP? So they dig deep into those things, and they don't see any value addition to what you're bringing on board. And for me, the fund that Nick talked about, the facility that Nick talked about, I would like to know more about it, but I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim, for bringing that up. That accountability is not just about the finances, it's not just about money, but how exactly do we report on our programs? So thank you for that. I would now like to move to Ruth. So Ruth, you work with Water Sector Trust Fund, and your mandate is to finance the sector. So my question for you today is, what do you look out for, or what criteria do you use as Water Sector Trust Fund to select institutions, organizations, or groups to fund? And in addition to that, then what advice do you have for institutions and organizations out there on how to package themselves in order to be eligible to this funding?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joan. I have enjoyed the session, and I will attempt to answer the question. I want to start with a quote that is probably, I don't want to say overused, but it's used quite well in the water sector by J.F. Kennedy, the president, that whoever will solve the problems of water is worthy of 2 Nobel Prizes, one for peace and one for water. You can see how many things we are discussing here. The sector has so many facets, so many components. if you leave one behind, eventually you'll have to come back for it. And it's good that we are talking accountability so that we can move together, even in that particular component, because it's a big deal also in the sector. So how we finance and how we identify our financiers. So the Water Sector Trust Fund is a government institution. We are a state corporation operating under the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. And I'm happy today that the representative from the ministry is with us, and also my chairman and my board member are also with us here today. The Water Sector Trust Fund is a financing institution. We are not implementers. So we get part of our budget from the government, but we get a lot more from the development partners, because one of the mandates the government has given us is actually to mobilize additional finances. So when we get this funding, our mandate is in the Water Act 2016, the Kenya Water Act 2016, is to the underserved mostly, the marginalized, but also to the counties. Yeah, so it goes actually beyond just the issue of the underserved. So we have procedures. The same act basically tells us to create procedures and structures for financing and to ensure equity, which I know is one of the things that needs to come out in terms of this accountability. So we have procedures for accountability. So when we get this funding, one of the things that we really must do is to publicize to the target recipients. Target, because some of the funding is going to be at national level, so we get to advertise to the whole of the country. Some of it is targeted to certain counties. Then we have to make sure that those counties are aware of this funding. And we actually do advertise. We can advertise in the papers. We can advertise through the channels in the specific counties to make sure that all the stakeholders who are involved and all the beneficiaries who are supposed to benefit are aware of that funding. So we will advertise, we will do a call for proposal, we will articulate all the requirements so that anybody who is going to be doing a proposal to us is aware of the requirements for that funding, and we actually follow up and make sure that we have informed the target population about this funding. Of course, we do not fund individuals. That would be another issue for accountability. So we finance institutions. In the urban, we work with the water utilities. In the rural, sometimes we will work with the water utilities where the county has enabled their utility to reach certain rural areas. But in others, we will work with the registered community groups in that part of the rural area. So we have like some rural water utilities, if you wish, for lack of a better word. And if it's about water resources management, then we'll work with like the water resource users associations, conservancies, and so on. And whoever is the target recipient of these funds in that area, we just have to make sure that they have this information so they can do proposals. Then we go into the process of appraising at the management level, appraising in the field, and then recommending to our board, who will do a further review and finally approve for award those who have met the criteria that was advertised. We do a lot of capacity building to the implementers. So when we give award, when we award funding to these institutions, we give feedback to those who did not get funded. We basically try to explain what was not right with their proposal. And the hope is that the next time they're going to do better. They'll do a better proposal and they will get funding, because we are looking at equitable financing. So if it's always about who is doing it better, then some people are going to miss out. So we have to capacity build those who are not doing it as well as they should. So how we can advise the implementers on how to be able to get funding from us? Accountability. Let me start there, accountability. You give funding to an entity, they need to implement the project efficiently as how we signed with them, because once we award, by awarding I mean we sign a financing contract with them with conditions inside. So the same way we have conditions from maybe the government or development partners who give us funding, we have conditions for the implementing partners that we are giving this funding. So the first thing that they need to do is to implement the project in accordance with the financing agreement, to look at value for money, to make sure we meet the intended purpose. And in this case, almost always it's either impact in terms of last mile connectivity, or storage, or treatment, or distribution, or riparian conservation, water resources management, subcatchment protection, mangrove restoration, you name it. So if they meet the objective, and then once they've done that, they account for the funds. They have got to account for the funds, and they have got to report back to us for how they have utilized the funding to the last shilling. Yeah, to the last shilling. If the implementers can do that and be accountable, then there's a chance that they're going to be funded again and again and again. Because despite the fact that we do a call for proposal to all those who are supposed to be benefit under any of the proposals that we do, if we find that one of the implementers is having problems doing efficient implementation despite capacity development, if we find they're having problems accounting for the financing, then we may have to put them on hold for a while, because if something goes wrong with the funding, we are the ones who end up refunding that money to the development partners. And also it creates a bad image for the partners, but also for the government. Jane mentioned the audits, yeah? Forensic audits, institutional audits, project audits. And it doesn't look good on any organization if the audits come back negative. So accountability is key, but also the issues of capacity, which is something we do. We do give a lot of technical support to the implementers that we finance. So we do not always leave them to fend for themselves. We like to come in and also give that capacity support. And sometimes if it's not being done directly through us, it can be done through other organizations. So we have many partner organizations that provide technical support. We don't always have to be the ones doing these things. We don't always have to be the ones with the money to do these things. We can just partner. As a matter of fact, we have partnered also with KEWASNET sometimes to provide the capacity, to provide, for example, the issue of the governance tool, and also the issue of monitoring. So you don't have to do it all. There are partnerships, there are stakeholder engagements and collaboration that can help to enhance the accountability for the implementing partners. If they have any questions that they need to ask us, the implementers or the organizations that we fund, we operate an open door organization, so that we are always open for feedback, we are always open for questions. And so, for example, even in the website, we have a feedback mechanism and also a complaints procedure, right? And those referral mechanisms, we actually have got a citizens referral mechanism on the website, so we can receive feedback, we can receive complaints. We are not afraid of complaints, and we are not afraid of accountability issues. And just to mention, I know this was not necessarily a question for me, but let me just say this before I stop. In Kenya, there is also the Office of the Ombudsman, which is very useful for the citizen complaints and the citizen accountability issues. If citizens feel like they're not getting the help they need or response they need from the organizations of government or private sector or whatever, especially government, yeah, because the Ombudsman is for the public complaints. If they write to the trust fund and we don't solve their problems, they can actually write directly to the Ombudsman or the Office of the Administrative Justice, the CAJ. So they can do that, and the Ombudsman can pick it up. Of course, there are challenges and there are gaps, but I think there are mechanisms in place. We just need to make sure that they are enhanced. So it is probably more about enforcement and awareness, as you mentioned when you were presenting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ruth. That is very helpful. Now, I would like to come to you, Musa, and this is something that you mentioned in your presentation, social accountability. So how has financing social accountability worked in your areas of work? You could just take us through your experience and how that has worked out.
Merci beaucoup pour la question. En fait, notre expérience sur la comptabilité, en fait, la comptabilité, pour nous, c'est à 3 niveaux. Le premier niveau, ça c'est au niveau des autorités, des responsables qui doivent fournir des services, qui doivent être responsables, doivent rendre des comptes. Au même moment, les communautés au nom desquelles nous réalisons des infrastructures, nous menons des projets, doivent rendre des comptes. Parce que quand nous réalisons des infrastructures d'eau, c'est pour ces communautés-là et ces communautés-là qui doivent les gérer. Et dans ce processus de gestion, les communautés, ceux qui ont été chargés de gérer les ouvrages doivent rendre compte. Donc ça, c'est le second niveau. Le troisième niveau, c'est les organisations qui mettent en œuvre les projets, qui réalisent les infrastructures, doivent rendre des comptes. Doivent rendre des comptes non seulement aux bailleurs qui leur donnent de l'argent, doivent aussi rendre des comptes aux communautés. Et c'est de cela qu'il s'agit. Quand ces 3 niveaux-là, niveau autorité, les organisations qui mettent en œuvre les interventions, les communautés qui reçoivent les infrastructures, si tout le monde rend des comptes, je pense qu'il y aura la transparence, il y aura la collaboration et les services vont durer. Même les tensions, les taux de panne, toujours faire appel à des organisations pour venir faire des points d'eau, c'est-à-dire que tout cela va diminuer. Ça va créer la collaboration, la coordination, le vivre ensemble entre les communautés, la bonne collaboration entre les responsables et les communautés pour améliorer les services. Donc, la comptabilité sociale, donc c'est à ces 3 niveaux-là. C'est un défi. L'obligation de rendre compte, c'est un défi et c'est difficile, d'autant plus que voilà, c'est quelque chose qui n'est pas facile et que très souvent les gens n'ont pas ça dans leur culture. Quand ils demandent à quelqu'un de rendre compte, ils pensent que tu es là pour le suivre, pour le contraindre, et ça amène des tensions, je l'ai dit, entre les intervenants, entre les acteurs, et cela peut nuire à nos interventions. Mais quand il y a des bonnes approches, quand des approches qui ont été bien testées, bien mûries, bien développées, qui permettent aux gens de créer la confiance entre les intervenants, les autorités, et même les autorités avec les communautés bénéficiaires, je pense que cela peut nous amener à avoir plus de résultats. Aujourd'hui, la question de redevabilité, le financement, ce n'est pas du tout facile, mais nous le faisons à WaterAid à travers d'autres aspects. Par exemple, quand tu viens pour faire seulement un projet de redevabilité, peut-être, ça ne va pas trop aboutir. Mais si, à côté des actions de redevabilité, de gouvernance, il y a la réalisation des infrastructures visibles, donc cela encourage les communautés, les autorités à collaborer et à accepter d'être plus réactifs, d'accepter d'instaurer ce dialogue-là, tant entendu entre elles et les communautés, et à améliorer la fourniture des services. Donc, je pense que c'est de cela qu'il s'agit. Nous devons toujours nous focaliser, c'est ce que nous faisons quand même à WaterAid, donc nous nous focalisons sur plusieurs aspects, notamment la réalisation des infrastructures d'eau, Parce que quand les infrastructures sont là, sont visibles, ça encourage les communautés à participer. Ça encourage les autorités à adhérer aux initiatives parce que le besoin est là, les réalisations sont là, très visibles. Donc, c'est pourquoi nous menons des approches intégrées. Des approches intégrées, réalisation d'infrastructures, le renforcement des capacités des acteurs et des actions de redevabilité, tous ensemble pour améliorer la fourniture des services d'hygiène et assainissement. Donc, chez nous, nos expériences, c'est toujours des éléments, des approches bien intégrées, des approches programmatiques bien intégrées, bien réfléchies pour pouvoir atteindre les résultats attendus. Merci.
Thank you so much. We can definitely all understand and believe that there is power in citizen voice. And when citizens come together, they can actually demand accountability and we can see change. So we now have 10 minutes before we end our session. And I would like for us to spend that 10 minutes with a Q&A session. So should you have any questions, please raise your hand and mention the name of the speaker that you're directing the question to.
Thank you. My name is Tamani Chaka from Ethiopia. For IRC, what is your advice in terms of improving the accountability from donor side so that what is allocated can be appropriately used in terms of financial or governance, whatever accountability condition can be maintained, and also to the government for public money to spend or all accountability condition to be maintained. Thank you.
We can take the questions and then they'll respond.
Thank you very much. What can be done, I think, the summary of the study that was done, I think, referred to trust and trust issues. From both sides, issues of trust need to be addressed. There are certain communities or even certain countries where trust took off completely from both sides. We don't trust the authorities don't trust you. You don't trust the communities don't trust you. And you cannot talk about accountability if trust issues have not been addressed. You need to really get on with that. And the trust issues can be addressed by, I think it was mentioned by my sister here, improving on communication, feedback, provide responses, target the last mile, target the last person in terms of services. What are the regulations in place? What are the governance systems and structures that are in place? Are they trusted? You know, are they done openly? Are people recruited openly? When money comes, in my country at the sub-county, sub-district level, money comes into the sub-district and they put it on the bulletin board openly. That this is money that has come. So much is going to health, so much is going to agriculture, so much is going to this. That openness, of course, there will always be excuses that people don't know how to read. But those that can read, provide them with that opportunity to access that information. And then secondly, from both everybody that is involved, I think let's acknowledge the fact that accountability goes hand in hand with an enabling environment. What are the policies that are in place? Are the policies the right policies? Were they developed in the right way? Do they address issues that need to be addressed? Human rights, defining rights. Are they reaching out to the vulnerable communities, persons with disabilities, women, children, youth, everybody? The laws that are in place, are the laws really aligned? Are they even understood? Are they known? Where can they be found? Who interprets them? So from government side, really providing that enabling environment and building it consciously and putting in resources, public finance to really do that. And then thirdly, from my perspective, is generating evidence. We don't have evidence. We do research, but probably we don't do the right research. And if we do, we don't take the results to the right people. You do research, you have very good findings, you sit with them. They should go where they are supposed to be interpreted and used. Are they going to Parliament? Are they going to the council? Are they going to the technical people? We really need to generate evidence. And I'll give a good example for Uganda. The study that we are referring to on the economic implications of not funding sanitation and hygiene was done in 2012 when the World Bank had the WSP program, the water sanitation program. That's so many years ago. You can't continue referring to 2012. You know, 2012 we did this study. It's no longer relevant. So really putting resources into generating research, partnering with academic institutions, with research institutions that can provide that research. As I speak now, my Ministry of Health is the lead for the Sanitation and Water for All, SWA, and because I'm part of the SWA country process team, in negotiations with the Economic Policy Research Center in Makerere University to do a research on the implications of not funding WASH for health. Because we want to develop a cabinet memo that will go to the minister and to the president to say, put more money into sanitation, hygiene, and water. And this is the evidence. If you put more money there, this is what you will get. This is what the country will benefit. So we really need to generate evidence that we can use and take it to the highest level. Now we are targeting the president. But who else should be targeted with the evidence that we generate? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kyla Gregory. I'm with an engineering firm in the US called Green Power Technology. First, I want to say bravo. Each of you is an incredible presenter, and your message is so well received, and I hope that everyone at CIWI gets a chance to hear from each of you. So thank you. My question is about leveraging other sectors. Have you thought about, or any of you sort of ruminated or made some efforts to figure out how, because water is not alone, right, in the accountability and governance issue. It's one of many basic services that drives sort of governance, that drives accountability, that drives civic engagement, that drives lots and lots of different downstream effects. And I'm wondering if any of you have thought about how you could leverage other sectors or work collaboratively with the health, with the agriculture sector, some of those that are economically productive, and that might have a little bit more leverage within some of your government counterparts to sort of make it a bit easier to accelerate some of the accountability gains.
Okay, maybe I can just give one example. Yeah, I don't think you can work alone. You just have to work with other sectors. So like Jane says, she's in health and driving the sanitation. So in water, like in Kenya, the infrastructure for sanitation and the service delivery in terms of connectivity is with the Ministry of Water. But the public health issues are with the Ministry of Health. We have no choice but to work together. So when we are doing sanitation, we actually work with the public health office. So we basically work with the Ministry of Health. I can just give one more example. In water resources management, it involves also protection of not just the riparian, the water resource, the riparian lands, the wetlands, but also forest management. So again, Kenya Forest Service is not necessarily in the Ministry of Water, but we have to work with the Kenya Forest Service because we also work with community forest associations to restore forest and manage forest. So just as an example, we are multi-stakeholder, and even when it comes to issues of polluting, you have to go further and maybe even work with industry, whoever is in charge of the Ministry of Industry, so that they can also invoke the enforcement. And of course, the Ministry for Environment. Yeah, I don't think you can have, you can work in anything in water and leave out the Ministry of Environment. So yeah, I think it is almost an obligation. And I think if we don't work with one another, we just do ourselves more harm than good. Yeah.
And just to add quickly, in Uganda, there are multi-sectoral platforms that bring together the different sectors. Actually, we don't even call them sectors anymore. We have programs according to our National Development Program. But agriculture, health, energy, local governments, the effort is there. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like the biggest, I think, issue that we had was on developing the national irrigation policy. And the questions were, who should lead? Ministry of Agriculture or Ministry of Water? And it took quite some time to really sort that out. Not so much about, probably the technical people knew who should actually lead, but there are personalities involved. There are egos to deal with. There is money to deal with. Who is going to receive the money that will work on that? But eventually, the two ministries really came together and agreed that these are the portions that water will lead, and these are the portions that agriculture will lead. And now we have a national irrigation policy. And we have the Office of the Prime Minister. It's in charge of government business. So it really ensures that, that things happen. Once in a while, you will see the gaps are there. Communication, negotiation skills, time management skills, people disappearing here and there. But the intention, the good intention to do that is really, really there. And when it comes to specifically energy, the Ministry of Energy, we rely almost 100%, 99-something% on hydropower. Energy has to, they have an agreement with the Ministry of Water. Ministry of Water releases. And we also have to deal with the riparian issues, the transboundary issues on the Nile, on Lake Victoria, on River Kagera. We are in the middle of upstream and downstream, so we also have to think about that. So you really need to leverage, whether in terms of resources, but also in terms of ideas, concepts, technical assistance and guidance, which policy is working where, what should we use. If you are not talking, then you really get yourself into trouble. But in Uganda, the efforts are really there. Thank you.
All right. I believe I'm loud enough. So in the interest of time, I would like us to finish in the next 1 minute. I'll direct this to one of the speakers, Musa. So a question online asked by Musa from WaterAid Sierra Leone, who says, how can we ensure that the lessons learned and strategies developed effectively address unique challenges faced by marginalized communities?
Okay, merci beaucoup pour la question. Oui, je dirais oui. La stratégie que nous développons, avec cette stratégie-là, nous arrivons à résoudre le problème des groupes marginalisés. Parce qu'à travers ces stratégies, nous donnons les outils nécessaires, nous mettons en place des mécanismes nécessaires qui amènent les groupes vulnérables à réclamer leurs droits, à faire le suivi de la fourniture des services d'eau, que ce soit dans les centres de santé, que ce soit dans les écoles et au niveau communautaire. C'est vrai, il y a toujours des défis, mais aujourd'hui, à travers nos expériences, à travers nos différents projets, les outils que nous avons développés arrivent aujourd'hui à trouver la solution, à renforcer, à autonomiser les groupes vulnérables, à trouver la solution par rapport à la fourniture des services d'eau, d'hygiène, assainissement. Les communautés arrivent à collaborer avec les autorités, à les pousser à être plus réactifs, à rendre des comptes et à améliorer les services dans les centres de santé, dans les écoles et même au niveau communautaire. Merci.
All right. Thank you so much. A round of applause for our speakers. And thank you so much, everybody, for making the time. Enjoy the rest of your day.